Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's podcast is number 619. The topic is training, and the title is Contest Prep Service, Assessment and Personalized Programming. So, recently I was talking with somebody about the idea of contest prep. So with the coronavirus kind of shutting everything down recently, there will be a time, hopefully, that contests, aesthetic-based contests will open back up. And aesthetic-based contests being, bikini, wellness, figure, physique, men's physique, there's men's bodybuilding, there's like 400 categories. But all of those ones. So eventually the shows will start back up. And when they do, people are going to want to be in good condition. They're going to want to kind of reclaim their bodies probably from before the coronavirus kicked in. So they're going to want some contest prep programming. The person I was talking with, we were talking about what they would do with their programming in order to make sure they looked correct for the division that they were going in. So everybody's body is whatever yours is today. So when you look at contest categories, that's kind of like the finish line. We know where everyone wants to end. So each category has like a specific look or a specific aesthetic to it. So we know that's where we want to end. But where everybody starts is absolutely different. So I was talking with them about the parts, different body parts they want to focus on, what exercises would focus on those parts the best, given the equipment they have access to, and then how frequently they would have to train each body part in order to make the aesthetic change that we want while still having a caloric control for fat loss. So we're going to maximize meal timing so they have protein available for growth immediately after workouts, but the rest of the time they're going to have their calories controlled to help promote fat loss. So we're going to be staggering their calories around their workouts, and specifically around the workouts that we want the muscles of which to grow the most. So all of that came to be, and we figured, I was talking with them, and they asked if this is something I did on a regular basis, and I said, hell yeah, but I didn't advertise it on our website, so I have to kind of throw it up on the website and let people know that this is something we do. So I have helped people earn pro cards in both tested and non-tested federations, and I've coached athletes in every division that there is in aesthetics. So bikini, wellness, figure, women's physique, then there's men's physique, there's classic physique, there's bodybuilding, all of them. So I've coached somebody in every single one of them, and I know the posing for actually all of them. Yes, even bikini. So I have posed in heels before. So I usually do the posing, the nutrition, the training. I kind of help them with everything. And I like it that way because very often in this industry, more often than not, unfortunately, most trainers, and especially when you look at aesthetic competitions, they're just going to be looking for money. So I might be helping them with the training, but some other person might be doing their nutrition, and they're not going to do the nutrition the best way to match the training. Like I said, like in the example of the client I was talking to recently, they're not going to do the nutrition where it's staggered specifically to which body parts they want to grow on which days. And the coaches end up having 30 athletes in one show. That's absolute bullshit. There's no way they're running personalized programming for 30 people in one single show. So they would just have all the bikini athletes follow the exact same program, training and nutrition, and whoever is kind of genetics best match that program tends to look the best. So they'll say, I got, 12 girls in this upcoming competition. That's not necessarily a good thing, because how the hell are you giving them individualized attention? How are you going to give a single one of them your fullest attention when there's 12 of them? You're not. No way. So I would be kind of leery of coaches who try to promote that they have that many athletes all the time, and especially in multiples in one show, because they're not going to give you the best of attention. They're not. They just can't. It's absolutely impossible to divide your best attention up by 12 people. Just makes sense, right? So I like to work with people individually towards single shows. I have helped 2 or 3 people at shows before, and I even tell them that if they all do this one together, we can do it together, and I'm going to try to give my best attention to everybody, but we also got to kind of pair together and be a team, so they'll know that my attention is divided. But I tend to try to do individual individual people per contest. And what's the benefit of for me is that since I don't care about making $4 million and driving a Lamborghini, I can do that and still pay my bills and still earn a good living while not having to rip money out of everybody and try to train 1 million people. So I have done it. So pro cards, like I said, and tested and non-tested federations, athletes in every division. I've been personal trainer for 18 years. I have a certified personal training through ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine. I have a corrective exercise specialist degree through NASM. I have a master's in nutrition. I even have a teaching certification in health and phys ed, so I know how to explain and teach complex movements well. So I'm well qualified educationally, formal education, and I'm well qualified experiential. Like I said, I've got pro cards for people. So when I talk with clients and I'm telling them what is involved to get their best physique, I know. I know because I know the science, and I know because I've seen it a billion times over. So when we talk in person and we do the assessments of their physique, that's one of the biggest benefits that I can give to them as a coach. Rather than just saying, oh, you're going for bikini, here's our bikini program. Well, how the hell do I know if that's what that person needs the most? So I want to go through kind of 2 examples of individuals who needed things a little different than what would be kind of typical in a base program written just for the category rather than for the individual. So I want to give 2 examples, and then I do want to kind of talk about the service that we provide so those who are interested in it would be able to take advantage of it. Now, even if you don't take the service, there's still tons of benefit to what I'm about to explain with these individuals, because it's going to give you the idea of what to look for in yourself. So don't tune me out just yet. This actually is going to be beneficial even if you never buy the service. And I promise to always do my best with podcasts like this, where I am trying to give information behind a service, but still make sure it's useful for everybody else. Okay? So one example we have, we'll just name the guy Matt, and he was going for men's physique. He had basically 3 key areas that we focused in on during his prep. Typically, you want to, like, you can definitely crush one single goal. If you want to change a certain aspect of someone's physique during, like, say, a 20-week prep, 20-week prep, you can absolutely do 1. You can definitely do 2, and I often try to kind of fit in a 3rd, because you can do it with programming and nutrition if you layer the programming correctly. So you can target like kind of 3 main areas and make a visual, actual difference in 20 weeks. So for Matt, who was doing men's physique, we wanted to get a wider chest. He already had a pretty well-developed lower chest, and he needed width. So chasing the upper chest would not have worked well, because it would have given him a chest kind of pop from the side. It would have given chest thickness, but that's not really what you need in men's physique as much as you need chest width. So this guy was actually a male model and actually wanted to do the competition as a way to get better shape for modeling, get a better aesthetic look for modeling. And it worked out well that men's physique kind of led towards the type of body that he wanted to have for modeling. So rather than chasing the upper chest, which would have wasted time in the sense of not getting him exactly what he needed for the competition and not what he needed for straight-on photos and modeling, we went for the width of the chest. Now, this was very specific exercises. A lot of neutral grip presses rather than overhanded presses. So we were doing neutral grip presses at decline, flat, and incline. Every angle we could get. We were doing 1-arm presses, 2-arm presses. We were doing slow eccentrics. We were doing drop sets, rest pause, you name it. It was every kind of neutral press possible. We even have neutral press and angled press bars that we were using in his training. And we were doing flies, lots and lots and lots of flies. But we were doing outside midline flies, meaning he was not allowed to bring the dumbbells above his shoulders. So when you're doing dumbbell flies, you do them against gravity, and as the dumbbells raise up above your shoulder joint, it deloads the working muscles. The working muscles only fire stability, like the chest only has to fire for stability when the dumbbell is above the shoulder joint. So we were staying outside the shoulder joint for all of his flies. That kept constant tension on the outside of the chest, and it was really, really good for growing width in his chest. We also did really wide grip dips, so they were very forward leaning. So it almost would have mimicked like an extreme decline chest press. So in his photos, when you look at where we started to where he ended, holy hell, he got an enormous width, enormous thickness on the outside edge of his chest. So it worked extremely well. We also worked on shoulder cap. That was our second main focus. So he had overdeveloped front shoulders, which actually was why he was underdeveloped in his front chest. So the way he had been pressing before he met me was with improper shoulder blade bracing. So he tended to kind of overwork the front of his shoulder when he did chest presses, and would often talk about shoulder pain after chest day. He'd have like that one spot on the front of his shoulder would always be sore, a little bit hurt. So we had to correct his form for that. Since he had overdeveloped front shoulders, we focused mostly on middle and rear shoulders. So we did a lot of slightly leaning forward lateral raises. We did them standing, seated, one arm, leaning out from a wall, leaning into a wall, bands, chains, you name it. So we made a ton of variety, but we kept with that basic motion of a leaning slightly forward lateral raise. We just changed the stimulus. We changed it from cables to free weights to bands. We just always wanted to kind of make it in a way that his body could not predict the movement, and try to become more efficient in the movement in a sense of saving the stress and damage on the muscles. We wanted to constantly present a new style of the movement so his body couldn't protect itself from proper muscular damage that would be needed for growth. The third area we focused on was back depth. So since he was doing men's physique, he really did not want wide lower lats. We didn't really want a ton of width. We just wanted depth. We wanted tons of detail when you look at his back, but not width. So we focused on the lower traps and the inner lats. We did this through a lot of horizontal shrugs. So rather than shrugs up and down vertically with the body, the plane of the body, we did horizontal plane shrugs. And this would be shrugs on a chest supported back row. So you would just shrug it in the rhomboids, like the mid back and the lower traps. You would squeeze that, but just not bend your elbows. So it's not the full row, just a lower trap and rhomboid squeeze. We would do that on the chest supported row. They would do that on cables, seated cable row with a million different grips. And we did a lot of really heavy overhanded narrow grip with our mag handles, M-A-G. You can Google that if you want. That's a great handle. Overhand, narrow, mag handle for cable seated rows to grow the lower traps in the inner edge of the lats. So that was our main three focuses for Matt. And if he would have had a program that was just general for men's physique, they would have wasted time on the lower chest. They would have wasted time on the upper chest. They would have wasted time on the inner chest. He didn't need any of that. He needed width. They would have wasted time on front shoulders. There would have been overhead pressing. There would have been front raises. That was absolutely waste of time for Matt, sorry. He would not have needed any of those. Every single one of those exercises that would have been in a generic basic program for men's physique would have been a wasted opportunity that he could have looked even better on stage if he'd been doing the right exercise. Same thing for back. They would have had overall back development. There would have been lat pull downs. There would have been things for the lats, the upper traps. He didn't need any of that stuff. That all would have been absolutely wasted time. Wasted. So that was the benefit of getting a physique assessment and then getting program written specific to his aesthetic weaknesses. So every single minute in the gym was exactly what he needed to look his best. Like I said, just because we know it's men's physique, that means we know the finish line. That doesn't mean everybody starts with the same body. Everybody has their own individual needs, their own individual pathway to that same finish line. Okay? The other example we have is women's bikini, and we'll just name this person Jamie. That'll be a good example. I actually do know Jamie. I'm laughing at myself right now. I know a Jamie who I helped for women's bikini, but this wasn't her. So that maybe wasn't a good name to throw out there because she's going to think I'm talking about her. But we'll just say Jamie because I named it already. She did women's bikini, and our main three areas was glutes, shoulders, and lower stomach. So we're going to go through this. The reason, glutes were important, but it was very specific that we grew the bottom edge of her glute. So she had really nice glutes, very good overall kind of shape, but they were underdeveloped on the bottom end. So she had too much meat to the glutes on the top compared to the bottom. So when you turn from the side, it was almost like the bottom of the butt, like the bottom of the glutes looked flat. And that would not have looked good in women's bikini. So we needed to create more bottom edge glute growth. But also, she had really thick upper hamstrings because they would cheat all the time to take over for her lower glutes. So she had thick upper glutes, thick hamstrings, but she didn't have thick lower glutes. So her glutes looked flat from the side. Okay? So this was really important because we had to pick hip-based movements and leg-based movements that didn't emphasize the upper glutes and didn't emphasize the upper hamstrings. If she would have done any effort towards the upper hamstrings, it would have just compounded the problem and made the lower glutes continue to look underdeveloped. If we would have continued to overdevelop the upper glutes, that would have clearly not worked as well either for aesthetics. So there were very, very, very specific exercises that would have been the worst for her to do. And then very specific exercises that were the best for her to do. So we have a belt squat machine at our gym. So we did a lot of standing hip thrusts. Because a standing hip thrust has really no chance at all of over-contracting the upper glute compared to the lower glute. And since I was able to train her on hip tilt positioning, we were able to take the upper hamstrings out of the movement. So we did belt squat standing hip thrust. We did short range banded RDLs. So short range means she never, like at the top of an RDL, she never contracted her glutes hard enough and pulled her shoulders directly over her glutes. That would fire her upper glutes. So we always kept her shoulders in front of her hips at the top. And we also always had a tucked hip position at the top. So that way the upper part of the glute could never fully contract to take the brunt of the weight force. The reason why they were banded was so that way at the very bottom, it was actually lighter than it was at the top. If you weight it at the bottom, it actually grows the upper hamstrings. Then as you would come up with a normal RDL, the glutes would become more involved, but the weight becomes less and less because the hips are getting closer to the weight load. So whereas if you band them from the bottom, any type of RDL or stiff leg deadlift, you get more glute involvement rather than hamstring involvement. And we did hip rotation kettlebell RDLs, meaning we have the kettlebell hovering off the ground and they work on hip rotations of a tuck, extension, and that contracts the lower glutes. So these were very specific exercises, but they were absolutely necessary to where we didn't develop the upper glute and we didn't develop the upper hamstring. It was specific into the lower glute because that's specifically what she needed to develop. So that way she could have a better booty pop and a better curvature to her glutes when viewed from the side. The second thing, like I said, we focused on was shoulders. She was not strong enough in her shoulders, doing overhead presses and lateral raises to create enough damage that it would warrant only training the shoulders twice a week, which would be most common programs. Women's bikini, they might only have you do shoulders once a week or twice a week at most. That is not enough for most females, since they are not strong enough to really use a significant amount of weight load on overhead presses and lateral raises, especially bent over lateral raises for the rear delts. There's not going to be a lot of muscular damage created in their workouts, and that muscle damage that they do create can often be healed and repaired within a single day or two. So we actually trained her shoulders 5 days a week. Yes, and they actually grew because, again, just like the first example and just like the example to start out the podcast, we structured their nutrition around the workout times. So that way when they had the most muscle damage present, they would have the most protein present in their diet. Okay? Then the last thing we focused on for her was lower stomach. So she had been through some pregnancies. Her lower stomach was weak and it kind of protruded out when you looked from the side. So she didn't have fat there, just the muscle belly was weak and therefore had kind of an outward appearance to it. So we worked a lot on vacuums, which is an exercise to kind of pull in the abdominal wall. So the rectus diastasis, I think if I'm saying that right, recti diastasis, is an issue when you have abdominal spreading and weakness in pregnancy. So I don't know if I said that correctly or not, but it's around that word. And that's very, very common. It even happens in overweight males, and it can lead to hernias. So one of the ways you can address that is using a vacuums, where you would actually have the sensation of holding your pee. Okay, so you can actually play along with this if you'd like to. So have the sensation of holding your pee. Then I want you to pull your belly button inward like you're trying to touch your backbone to your belly button. Okay? You're going to touch your belly button to your backbone while holding your pee. What that does is that trains that lower part of the abdominal wall to tighten up and be strong. So she would hold that position for 3 to 5 seconds, and we would do that for 10 to 20 reps. She would do that randomly throughout the day all the time. So I used to do it when I was training clients because I always wanted to make sure I didn't have a fat stomach. So I'm at 270 pounds right now, and I look pretty good at 270 because I keep my abdominal wall very strong and I keep it trained inwards. So I always pull my abdomen wall and everything inwards to give me a narrower waist. You can do dead bugs. You can do anti-rotation movements as well. So a lot of pull-off presses, a lot of pull-off exercises. P-A-L-L-O-F, if you want to YouTube that real quick. So that was her program. The 3 key areas we worked on was the bottom of the glutes, trying to avoid upper glute and hamstrings. We worked on the shoulders, but we had to train them very often due to strength limitations. And we focused in on the lower stomach. She could have been absolutely shredded. Very low body fat percentage, but if her stomach was protruded due to a weak abdominal wall, it would have downgraded her aesthetics. So, again, for each of these clients, the category they wanted was a known finish line. Okay? So, Matt knew he wanted men's physique. Jamie knew she wanted women's bikini. They knew where they wanted to end. But where each of them started was different. And it would have been different from other people going for men's physique. It would have been different for other people going for women's bikini. Each person has their own starting place, even if they all have the same ending place. Okay? So, programs that are written by category, they're okay. They make sense. If I want to compete in bikini, give me a category, give me a program that would make me most likely to look like a bikini athlete. However, what weaknesses do you have more so than whoever they thought they wrote that program for? So if you're looking at a trainer who wrote the program, did they write it for who? A general aesthetic, a person who is just slightly underdeveloped in all areas and slightly overweight? That's probably not you. You probably have some areas that are totally fine and some areas that are way far behind. So if you take a generic program that's written kind of down the middle, you're going to get down the middle results. That is not what anyone wants. So programs by category are decent, but programs by the person are best. So that is what I do with anybody I take to a competition. So every single person I've ever taken to a competition, got a pro card, even first-time competitors, all that stuff, we always write their programming based on their needs. And it would be based on their needs, even for nutrition, based on their schedule, what their food preferences are, food allergies, all of that stuff. So I'd always do their nutrition, always do their training, even teach them the posing, everything. Okay? So what we're going to offer as a service is an assessment of your aesthetics. What are your weaknesses? So we think through Matt. He needed a wider chest. He needed a shoulder cap. He needed back depth. But all of that was specific to what his issues were. If you think of Jamie doing women's bikini, it was specific in how we trained her glutes because we knew we only needed the bottom. We did not want to work on hamstrings. She was already developed in her hamstrings. So if she would have had a generic program that had hamstring curls in it, it would have been an absolute waste of her time. And it actually would have lessened the developed aesthetics of her glutes. So what we'll do, if for anybody interested in this service, is you would have an assessment done of your physique. It would either be done in person or virtually. Okay, like via video or photos, but we would communicate back and forth. We would get an idea of what your body looks like. We would be able to tell you what your key areas to focus on are. Then we could write a program specific to those needs and specific to your equipment that you have available and specific to your schedule. Okay? Typically, this is going to be done for 20 weeks because it allows enough time to actually make physical growth differences to the muscles while still dieting it down for fat loss. Within those 20 weeks, there will be check-ins every week via email, and we would actually update the exercises in the training program every month, and there's additional service options for nutrition, which will be updated as frequently as needed. There's additional services for posing. So I can help with posing, and actually Meredith, my fiance, is going to help with posing as well. And she has competed in women's physique, and she freaking won first overall in a huge competition in her very first one. She's amazing. She's badass. She looks great. So you would have a male and female kind of perspective, and we would be able to help you through posing. So you don't have to go to posing clinics. You don't have to pay $1 million to somebody else. We could pose you based on what we already know are your aesthetic pros and cons. We could teach you how to hide things that are underdeveloped. We could teach you how to promote and actually showcase things that are developed well for you. So we can teach you that along the way. There's also service options for increased accountability, more frequent check-ins or more in-depth check-ins, and we even have training sessions if somebody lives nearby our gym. So Brutal Iron Gym here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So the idea of this service is we can personalize your contest prep, specific to exactly what your physical needs are. Everyone knows where they need to go, but what are you starting with? We can help you. Okay, we can fill in those gaps. So whatever you would need to feel fully supported and fully cared for, to never feel alone in this prep, to never wonder if what you're doing is right, we will offer that service. We will help you through that journey. Okay? So make sure whatever programming you use is written for you, not just the category you're going for. Okay? So if you're going to pay for a program, if you're going to pay for a contest prep, why not pay for one that's specifically made for you? Make the contest the fullest and best experience possible. Okay? Now, if you'd like help with the service, please reach out to us. Our email is brutalironGym@gmail.com. If you're not interested in the service, just be sure to pay attention to your programming that you are using. Is it written specifically for your needs or just for a general category? If it is a general category, try to find out if there's ways you can kind of de-emphasize certain areas that are already developed well for you and plug in place of those exercises that target areas that you need to develop more. Okay? So take some time, really think through your programming and say, is this written for my category or is this written for me? Cool. Okay. Please share this podcast, by the way. So if you know anybody who does aesthetic competitions, or if you're kind of in that network, you have friends that do that kind of stuff, please share the podcast if you don't mind. It'll help us just kind of get word out there, and people will know that there's better programming available for them. There's programming that's best for them, that's actually out there, not $4 million to pay to somebody who never knows who you are. Okay? And you just get the same templated program that every other person gets. This one is personal. This one is for you. So please, please, please share the podcast if you don't mind. So if you have family and friends who would compete, who do compete or want to compete, we want the best for them, don't we? If they're our family and friends. So let's give them the best information possible. Cool. Okay, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd always love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.